So I'd like to introduce Dr. Pradeep from IITK to give his presentation on the just transition. Take the floor.
Thank you everyone, and thank you Ashish, and thank you Swarnkar and everyone present here. And we had a very nice experience at Pune in March, and I really like to welcome you at IIT Kanpur. And I am Pradeep from Department of Humanities and Social Sciences and associated with Chandrakanta Center from its beginning. Basically, I am a sociologist working on various climate and energy policy issues. Today, I am going to talk about a little bit about the concept of just transition and few slides from our field experiences. On few couple of slides on the concepts and then from our field experience. Now, the thing is that we are talking about like moving to a renewable energy, more sustainable energy, but conceptually it is actually very nice, but very difficult to implement in the grassroots level, because in India, all over the world also, we already have some social hierarchies. How production of energy happens in India, even in the fossil fuel, from the fossil fuel or from the renewable. So how people are associated with that. So as a sociologist, I am looking at the bottom people, the grassroots people, the worker, and there are various types of worker in India which is not there in the other countries. In other countries, like we can say a very coal dominant South Africa, or like West Virginia, or even Germany, we have seen more formal workers, and here we have informal workers, we have induced workers who are very coal dependent, and our districts are very mono industry districts. So where coal is there is no other thing. So moving from coal, when there will be no coal, then what is going to happen? And there is a concept of justice in this entire thing. Now, justice, as it's little bit of political, questioning certain things, people are looking for their rights, and that is why it's very tricky to actually look at this research on these things and implement in the policy level. So without wasting much time, let's move to my next slide. As you already know that the Honorable Prime Minister committed most important things for the pathways of energy transition. This 50% is in the revised index is actually 45%, but we have certain targets for 2030. And we are already end of 2022, so more or less we have 8 years to go. One way we are actually installing more and more renewable energy plants, particularly solar, and exploring other stuff like hydrogen and offshore wind and these kind of things. But in another dimension, how we are looking at the traditional sources of energy like coal, it's not decreasing, and I can tell you that in the present year it's I think 600 million tons the coal India has extracted, and in next 1 or 2 years the target is to cross it 1000, so 1 billion tons. So we are actually increasing our coal production, and there are thermal power plants which is operating. And if there is energy crisis, we are actually very much dependent on coal. So talking about renewable is fine, but also our basic infrastructure is very coal dependent. But there are some news, like I think tomorrow Mr. Jain will also talk a little bit about like how the Ministry of Coal also established a just transition group. CIL very recently, within a month or two, established all its 8 subsidiary, its just transition group. So this word just transition is coming not only in energy but also in other fields like renewable energy, agriculture, all these things. So that is why when 2030 will come, then their pressure will be there, and when there will be a scale up of closing either mines or thermal power plants, then what is going to happen to the community? So that's the context. Now, to understand the justice, I am not going to go detail into this both the things, but one is very analytical and conceptual form of justice, and another when we are implementing the policy, how we actually measure this kind of stuff. So two important things I will talk from this analytical part. One is distributive justice, what we little bit discussed in the morning session. that who is getting benefit and who is paying and who is getting benefit. If I install something here, whether the nearby people are getting electricity out of that, or the other state or other community is getting, and who is actually losing their land, whether they are getting something. So this kind of distribution is there. Now, as this is an opportunity, I will say, when we are going for energy transition, in the procedure of any decision making, most of the time, the inclusion is actually not very much there. So mostly it is top down, like the either intellectuals, think tanks are giving some inputs for the policy, or the government system is itself taking care of how it should go. Now this is an opportunity where we can include, even when we are developing some solar park. It is also in many countries, we have seen in Australia and other places, like the community engagement is there. And decentralized solar are actually very interesting form of more community engagement, but that is not a discussion point today. Now, two important things, because we are very concerned as a country for the energy security. And for energy security, two important things are there. One is availability and affordability. Whether it is available in our locality, at our home, or whether we can afford it, even if renewable. And that's why the question of what is actually the purchasing capacity and what is the price, all these discussions are there. Apart from that, there are few issues related to justice, but today we are not going to discuss those other issues like intergenerational mobility, good governance and other stuff. Now, few slides from our study. So we are working on just transition for more than a year, and we conducted a few case studies, went to the field, talked to the people and various stakeholders, and we have done in West Bengal, we have done in UP, in Singrauli district, both in thermal power plant and the coal mine. But recently we are looking for certain examples where coal mines were closed, and though no alternative sources are actually there. So, and we got a place in Assam, Dibrugarh district, that where in the past 2-3 years, things are closed, and then the coal mine again reopened. So this is a good case study for a group of people who like to work on just transition, how people survive. We know there are standard things like diversification, like reskilling, but what is going to happen to a community when the actual their livelihood source is actually closed? So let's see few slides. The most important thing, all this in energy transition, we are going to see in the next few years is the migration. Because whatever is our system, it is not easy to actually give the equal payment what they are getting right now. Because the payment, again I am talking about for the formal worker, it will not be a problem. Like in CIL, we have around 2,50,000 to 3 lakhs formal worker and few contractual worker. Even contractual worker we have list, but there are various informal worker, and I can say in coal mine districts there are a lot of illegal ways of actually getting something, but people are actually running their livelihood. So there should be a movement, and movement is not very close, not from one district to another district. So we have seen that movements are actually there for the various parts of the world, and very insecure actually the job description. But still people are moving, and there is a problem of H6 pyramid. So the earning member of the family who are associated with the coal mine, they are moving far away from the southern India. So this is a very important point we have to take care when we need to think about transition. The most important thing I would like to tell that our coal blocks are actually there in this region, like Jharkhand, like West Bengal, like Odisha, these kind of places, and our renewables are actually coming in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, in Tamil Nadu, so western and southern part. So it's not easy to replace people or reskill people, the local people. So this is a kind of a general design problem. And that's why we thought that migration, and we have observed that migration is a very important issue when we are talking about transition. Now how to, because we have seen during COVID a lot of migrant people, and it's very difficult to take care of the migrant population. Another thing is that most of the infrastructure in coal districts are developed by the coal companies like Coal India Limited. like we have seen the health infrastructure, the education infrastructure, and all the other social facilities are actually done by the CIL. So if we are talking about resilience, how far we can actually absorb things or take things, that we can see there if there are closure or job loss, with what is going to happen. Now the provision of staff quarters, water and road, health facilities, education facilities, sports facilities, all is done by CIL. So we need to develop some mechanism along with the local people so that these facilities should continue even if after the closure of that particular mine. Just to note, I would like to tell you that formally there was no closure of coal mine in India. Some coal blocks actually closed, and then in the next it is another open. So till now it is not like the coal mine never closed, but one thing closing and next nearby it is opening. So people are moving from very close places to one another. Another important thing, like we have seen in Jharia, that place attachment is there even if the condition is very adverse, but people are not ready to move even if there is some incentive. So this kind of actually policy dilemmas are very much embedded in this kind of energy transition. So going to the next slide, we are focusing on an important agent because for any collective action we need some kind of a group, and we have observed that Coal India, or in the coal region, trade union plays a very important role, and there are 5 central trade unions associated with various political parties are very strong in coal blocks, and they actually played a very important role when the Assam coal mine closed, and because of them also people got a lot of facilities and rehabilitation and some sort of support, and this is a version of the trade union leaders. And they are actually working with the worker, and so they are empathetic and taking care of contractual worker, because contractors are may not be always very local, and strong bond between, I mean, it is not a political party. This is another important findings, like political party, they fight with each other because of the ideology, but within various different ideological trade unions, they are actually working together. For a proper energy transition, particularly community oriented energy transition, we need this kind of different ideological people should come and work together, and they have created a joint action committee. So these are some important things, but finally I would like to, yes, final slide. So finally I would like to talk about how what are the strategies and elements for the energy transition, both from the coal industry and the government. And coal industry, we have 2 important funds. There are huge CSR fund is there with the coal industry, and that can somehow be allocated for skill development. And post mining land use is very important. So ecological restoration is one important part, and some fund is already there, and how that can be utilized. And investment in various coal state for an alternative, either energy should be replaced with another energy, or non-energy business is also very important. And another important fund is there, DMFT, District Mineral Foundation Fund, that is with the district magistrate, that is very important. So the government industrial policies, diversifications are very important. We are working on giving certain strategies on diversification to Coal India, and convergence of government funds like DMS, as I said, District Mineral Fund, for skill training and local job creation. So with this, I'd like to thank, I think I'm in time. Thank you very much.
When you say that, of course there are a lot of workers in coal industry, and if it is going to be, let's say at some point, transition from coal to non-coal, is there a plan for this human migration or human employment, or?
There is unfortunately no plan, but the good thing is that there are a lot of discussions. So academic institutes, think tanks, and also consultant firm like now another thing is there by Accenture, but also with the Ernst & Young, PwC, they are working on the just transition, giving some inputs to the government. And state like Jharkhand and Odisha and West Bengal, they are coming up with some sort of plan. So people are thinking, and I can tell you in West or in South Africa, where there is some plan and they have some billion funding actually promised in the last COP. All these things happened in 20, 30, 40 years. So it's not like a very short-term goal.
Correct.
As you mentioned, it's very quite complicated. And that's why the Coal India, they established a just transition group. But how to do about this, what should be the strategy, how to include all these things, that needs to be done. So, but discussion is there.
What is the total size of the problem?
Total? Hello,
What
sir?
is the problem of the people or whatever it is, yeah? The total quantum of the people. I mean, this has to be evaluated with the perspective that the net growth in the coal-based energy may not be there, but the status would probably remain the same because the growth of energy consumption is much more.
Yes, and it will be going to increase.
The delta will go for the energy, clean energy or the new energy, renewable energy, whatever it is.
Yes.
But that quantum of the absolute value will remain probably the same. So is that the problem really that big as it has been seen at?
There are some technological problem also with the renewable, like we have discussed also in the Pune, like in the base load form and all these things, and in the hydrogen. There are, so maybe and if we talk to we have workshops here, people are from Coal India and other who are from NTPC, their perception is that coal is not going to close in next 30 years in India. They said that you talk about just transition, nice, fancy thing you do, don't worry, and do all this installation and all this stuff, fine. But we are the boss, so you cannot go beyond. I mean, you have to depend on us, and they are logically not wrong because the way we consume and the percentage, because installation is one thing and actual usage is another thing. So actually we are using more and more till now from these fossil fuel based things. So that's very critical. And the number wise, I have a lot of numbers, but just 10 minutes I don't want to give. As I said that around 2.5 to 3 lakhs formal worker, but 1.5 millions to 2 millions, and we are actually designing some calculation mechanism like how one coal worker is, how many people are dependent on one person. So you can give a number, but 2 million is like a kind of a very considerate number. And if we plan, we are working on the diversification. So 80,000 crore is required for a grand plan like Germany if you want to look at all these things. So this kind of quantum thing, who is going to give this money, from what fund, we don't know. So, and that's the debate, international agency or
But
national.
like agriculture, none of the coal miners would like his son to be a coal miner, number one. And to you, tomorrow the coal secretary of India would be here. You ask him that, what is the projection? He will say that the market forces will eliminate the coal-based power plants.
I give you the latest.
This is just tomorrow. You can ask.
What?
It is there to the video.
No, I'm just saying that the Niti Aayog latest projections. They say that it is not that it is not an or situation, it's an and situation. You will
Exactly.
need coal, percentage of total energy will keep coming down, but you will need coal for pretty long time. in
Right,
this country.
right. Completely agree.
So it's
So
coal based
it's not or, it's and. So it's a supplementing.
and
Yeah, just one question. Have we defined what just transition is? What comprises just transition? Number one. Number two, how big is the problem of migration within the just transition framework? And number three, have we, when we talk about, people moving from one energy sector to another, is there a particular inclination for a coal miner to move to an energy sector job only? Is there any particular inclination that you have noticed?
Okay, one by one. So definition problem is very interesting, and as an academician, we are very fond of giving some sort of definition. And there is contradictory definition. Like we have certain standard of what is the meaning of sustainable development, like the future generation should be secured and all these things. So for just transition, the definition is the inclusion, like the fair. So people who are getting some sort of livelihood, that should be retained. That's the thing, even if it is not growing. So that's the idea, like the inclusive, and that's why the distributive and procedural part is coming. So only government will giving subsidy, like I am taking land and I am giving them some subsidy. Is it a justice? Maybe justice from the government perspective, but not justice not from the actually person who is belonging that land. So this is the kind. So inclusiveness is the one, and the fair. These are the terminology which is very much associated with the just transition concept international. And this just transition come from the concept of just transition come from the American trade union movement. So this is very worker centric idea. Now all the business group is like working with this just transition concept, but the idea is coming from the worker. So this is.
But why is it so specific to people losing jobs in the climate sector? I mean, because of climate change. I mean, just transition should be applicable to people losing jobs in other places as well, isn't it?
Yes.
And that we haven't seen. Just transition is very climate specific.
That's why I'm saying this is an opportunity. In any transition there should be justice, but only we are talking about in the energy transition. So this is an opportunity to look at the people. Like for big dam rehabilitation, resettlement is there. I mean the hydropower settlement, and we have certain standard, but nobody talks about just transition and just kind of a hydropower settlement. And then coming to your next question. Next question is what?
Migration.
Oh, migration. So migration is studied here, and that's the unique case of Assam, because as I said, most of the time, I mean in like Ramgarh or Jharia or Angul or in Telangana, we have adjacent coal blocks. So people are moving from this place to maybe another 100, another 2 to 3 kilometer or 10 kilometer distance. So exactly you cannot actually track migration in that kind of region until unless this is a very isolated region, and that's why we can go to every village household and talk to different people and get some idea. But it will be huge when the entire region, like the Ramgarh is going to close. I am taking again in Ramgarh because she is from Ramgarh, she has much better idea, our faculty colleague knows me. So we can understand when the entire thing is closed, it's very mono industry specific. When that industry is completely gone, then there will be huge migration. And we are expecting as a researcher or as a kind of a policy advisor, when 2030 is going to come, so from 2027, 8, 9, this kind of things will be just transition discussion will be huge, because the closure will be huge. Because we have to show to the international community, actually we have reduced all these things, we are not increasing. So the increase of coal, even the coal extraction will be in next 2-3 years high, but there should be something, the thermal power plant will be like very negatively affected, because they are small and they are spread all over India, and that will be closed very soon. And it's a drastic migration will be there from one place, because there are some urban plants, there are some semi-urban plants, there are some semi-rural area thermal power plants are there. So this migration pattern will be different, and we are working on more like modeling kind of stuff to understand the migration numbers. And third question?
The inclination to work in energy sector itself.
Okay, so energy is, as I said,
requires a very different, it's not the same skills.
yes, definitely, and that's the biggest problem. But a lot of think tanks and even the CIF, the World Bank is talking about like reskilling, and we are working with UP skill development organizations who do reskilling for various kind of people. But we are focusing on the thermal power plant who lost their job in this Panki. Panki is very close to here. Now the thing is that reskilling is very difficult stuff. What kind of reskilling, and reskilling for whom? Like if you go to Jharkhand, you will say, I mean, as a formal, I mean, in this forum, we don't generally discuss, but people who can go to a coal mine and in their cycle they can bring lot of coals and come and sell that coal. Now, what kind of reskilling? They work only for 2 hours at night, and they are fine with everything. And poverty and other crimes are very much, if you map all these things, they are very coal specific, and a lot of interesting movies are also there on this coal thing. So how to reskill them? It is very difficult. That's why we are working right now on the intergenerational mobility. What are the facilities the next generation is getting, so that they can move and they can get a different kind of a job. So is that is possibility, or the women who are there, where there is a self-help group or MSME that can be engaged in any kind of job. I would like to actually discuss more because other speakers are there.
There is a very
This
future of thermal plant, there is one interesting concept is called repurposing of thermal plant.
Yes.
Because thermal plant is a place which has a electricity grid connection, it has a railway line, and it has a water availability also. And all green hydrogen plant will all require all these put together. So it makes a lot of economic sense to repurpose thermal plants. In fact, there in my state only, we are thinking of one thermal plant repurposing as a, hydrogen plant. There, what we are thinking, because even in any green hydrogen plant, you will need, finally you will need a generator to generate electricity. Only thing is that the thermal mine will be closed, but thermal plant worker can be reemployed. Our study shows that in fact it can generate a lot of extra employment also. So this is one model that is being talked about.
Right. Repurposing is very, very important.
So then otherwise there is a lot of additional land requirement, you have to acquire a lot of
And land is a very critical thing. Yeah.
Already, I give you an example of Singrauli district. You asked.
Yeah. We work
Singrauli is a
on
district which is the biggest power hub of the Asia. 30,000 megawatt generates coal.
Obra.
Singrauli and Bind and all. It's all Hind, all area. So what they are thinking is there are 7 power plants are there, 4 NTPC, 3 private power plants. So when they are all thinking in terms of repurposing. So that once you repurpose it, the advantage is that for green hydrogen you don't require any extra land, it is anyway there. There is not just concept, you don't need extra land. Grid is there, power is there, railway line is there.
And the worker can be re-employed, that's the most important.
You can hire more workers, there is studies done, you can get a more workers.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a question. Okay, so I have a question on your initial slide where you showed the justice part of it, and besides other things, there were 2 factors: availability and affordability of energy. But we have seen that exactly these 2 factors have influenced the frivolous use of electricity. So an affluent family uses far more electricity for entertainment than somebody else. And while we see that the most rapid growth of use of electricity is in entertainment and convenience and comfort, have we not looked at bringing that into the distributive justice part of it? Fair use.
Yeah, and that's why I just talked about this too when we were talking about the policy operational part. And I completely agree with you, but the question is that the group of people who uses more electricity or more energy in general, they are actually the decision maker. Okay. So they do, unfortunately, this kind of workshop, conference, business meeting, and they take the decision. And how it will be very altruistic kind of an idea, like you think that, okay, you will sacrifice, and that's why this Praveen's work is like fascinating, like in a way like showcasing something which is possible, like not conflicting, because if we say this, we will be very like identified as a very political identity. It's not actually that we got some opportunity to work together and give some alternative. So I completely agree with you, and that's quite correct, like we are talking about that usage of electricity or any kind of energy consumption, throughout the world it is like that. And if we look at the Oxfam report and all these things, what are the percentages of people, what kind, and how many millionaires, billionaires, all these discussions are there. But then people will identify that, okay, you are something like something, this ideology, and that is why you are focusing on that. Instead of focusing on that, how alternative can be given, what solution is possible within the existing government or the system framework. I think that's a very important thing that I learned from your last talk in Pune, and it is fascinating. And that's why you are trying to work a little bit on the concept of justice. I don't know, I mean trying to understand what grassroots people are talking about justice. ये तो हमारा बात है justice, just transition. उनको पता ही नहीं what is just transition. So what is their idea of justice? We are trying to document that and showing it to the policymaker. उसके बाद उनको लेना है नहीं लेना है, that's a different thing. But as a like a very credible academic institute, this is our job. I think I am over time.
Pradeep, I just had a
Yeah,
question
please.
that clarification.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, right.
So, just one small question. One is more of a insight from our field studies, and the other is more of a question. So, in Ruhr Valley and almost all the other case studies that we have, one of the things that has come up very clearly is that just transition is taking a very, very long time. Somewhere close to 50 to 60 years we got to go and that's not really.
Yeah, about 40 years. Yeah.
Well, just something, right? So, to the extent that at least in Germany, it has almost become a generational problem.
Right,
Now,
right.
given that we have now so many case studies coming up, has there been any analysis of how we could possibly reduce this time frame?
It's very complicated in case of India, as I have mentioned, because the formal worker and informal and all the other induced kind of a job is very much there in India. If we only think about it, what about, because we have a lot of pensioners also in the CIL and its subsidiaries. If we are only thinking about 3 lakhs workers or 5 lakhs workers, things can be done. But what about the other millions who are dependent on that, who are somehow very much dependent, their 80% is actually dependent on this coal block. It is very difficult. But still people are working on this, and hopefully by next year we will come up with something to showcase both on the repurposing and the diversification. So
Does this also mean that, you see, part of just transition is all about negotiations, right? As you said, negotiations are happening on this table, they're not really announced where it actually should happen. Is one of the problems that negotiations largely that the stakeholders are not at the table, and that is at the bottom-up approach of not being taken? For example, Ruhr Valley also, this started off from the top, the stakeholders
Right.
were all on the top. It is only at the later part of the 50th, 60th year that they are.
right. This is a very recent thing. Like this is happening for the last so many years, and we got something. We can see what is the transformation of Ruhr Valley. Otherwise, it will be like Detroit. So it's the industry gone and everything gone. So it will be very difficult. But we can see that in West Virginia, I just there in the clean energy mission in the Pittsburgh, and we have seen like how nice things have happened in many nice places in United States, and also people are happening like Kosato in South Africa. So in Malabunga they have all these things. So but that is very one geographic specific center, and India is like very diversified, and geographically we have the coal blocks are kind of very complicated. So we need certain things, and that's why the discussion is there.
And just lastly, that you speaking about technologies, you spoke about affordability and national availability. I was wondering whether acceptability is another parameter that becomes very important to just transition.
But yeah, that will complex another layer of complex things. Acceptability.
Just transition is complex. You can't remove one parameter.
So acceptability, yes, that's why I like to give the example of Jharia. When there is a Jharia is like always fire is there in Jharia. So people were given from CIL like, okay, we have housing from like 20 kilometers away, but they are not ready to go because there is a place attendant, and the psychological stuff is there, socio-psychological. We are not including here in the Indian condition of just transition, but it is there in other discussion of the just transition. Yeah, please.
I had a more basic question. In the migration which occurred when this coal mine closed, people went all over the place as you showed.
Yes, sir.
When the coal mine reopened, did they all come back?
No. So this is not all come back, but there was actually reverse migration because of that. Because people want to stay in their nearby with their family. This is a normal, like we don't have to be a sociologist to understand that. But if they are getting because this is a very uncertain job. The contractor might have given something, but with no security. And when they are living with their family, with their neighborhood and all these things, and I think Riti is there, yeah. So I think there is a lot of reverse migration, right, in that region. So she visited, so our team were visited. A lot of reverse migration already happening. And another, I think 5 coal mines were there, and 2 already opened, and another is going to open. So people are coming, not all, but people want to come back to their own locality. And that's why the repurposing is very interesting idea. So keep them where they are, don't, throw them, push them to another places. So that's another important.
We studied this transition nothing related to coal. In fact, in Goa, they closed all iron ore mines. What happens to them? They move down?
No idea about iron.
But this is not specific to
Yeah, true.
Industry just closes down.
Exactly. Right.
I had a
Thank
very
you.
quick comment. So one is I do think we have some time, like to grow India's GDP, we need to be growing electricity demand by 80 terawatt hours a year.
Right.
That's 40 gigawatts of renewables. And last year we installed 15 gigawatts of renewables. So we're not even close to meeting just demand growth with renewables. Only once we meet that, then we can start talking about closing down existing coal mines. And the other question I had for you was just quickly in terms of magnitude. You mentioned 80,000 core, and I'm just thinking, well, CIL makes 20,000 core a year, NDBC makes 20,000 core a year. Can we just take 10% of their profits and put it in a fund, or would that solve it? Or is there more to it than that?
I don't know.
I mean, they're being cheeky, obviously, but
Yeah. But there's an interesting joke, but I think that's very like in a meeting room, people say that somebody is knocking the door, right? And whoever listens, they have a liability to open the door, and that is why the coal, like NTPC and CIL, they don't want to directly engage into this just transition very prominently. Then they will say that, okay, give your 50%, give this and all these things. So people are thinking maybe the government will also, the local government, I mean the state government and the national plan, that framework is very, because it's not Ministry of Coal, it is Ministry of Power, as you are saying, MNRE, and all this actually they should work together, and working together in a government system, and you are doing that, like in ISA, so you know that how complicated is the fact, and we have a mismatch of number, like the demand and supply kind of a basic thing. So yeah, that's a very prominent point. And but the good thing is that both things happening, like the installation of renewable energy and thinking about the community. So this is a good thing about this kind of a new phenomenon of just transition. Thank you very much.
okay, could we just have one final round of applause? Thank you for that.